What's going on, guys? Back at it again with another banger video, and this time we're going to be flying this awesome electric plane to the surface of Eve. This is the beginning of a series I want to do where I conduct scientific experiments on the surface of Eve and establish a permanent scientific research base on Eve. So to get straight into it, you can see here, this is the launch vehicle we are going to be using to carry our electric plane to Eve. It consists of one main core booster stage with 3 vector engines. These alone have enough power and delta V to get it into orbit, and also to have a little bit of excess delta V in the end. You can see here we already have the fairing being deployed, revealing the compact and very efficient and elegant design of the plane within. The plane has 2 hinged wings, as you can see, that allow it to unfold and fold back in to be able to fit inside the fairing. As you can see, if it was in this form in the rocket ship, like it wouldn't fit like at all. So I had to make the wings hinged to be able to fit into a smaller compartment to make the design like functional and practical, somewhat practical. I like making my designs practical and I guess like reductionist. Like I don't like having a bunch of excess stuff if I don't need to. So anyway, now that I'm in orbit around Kerbin, the next step is to prepare my series of burns to successfully get to Eve. The only thing is, because I can't be completely precise and I had like some issues with where the thrust was located for the engine, I had to adjust a little bit for that second burn there. But anyway, getting a little bit behind in the video, I was able to successfully get into Eve with enough delta V left over to put myself in a decent parking orbit, I guess you could call it that. It ended up being a little bit elliptical because it's like I said earlier, I didn't really have quite enough delta V, but that's okay because we can just use the atmosphere to slow us the rest of the way down. So here you get to see even more of the plane revealed in what its final form will look like. And also there's another trick up my sleeve in having hinged wings. It also allowed me to put the plane in a more sleek and streamlined orientation for re-entry. So for the first time that I tried landing this thing, things look like they're going horribly wrong here, but they're actually going like pretty well by this thing's standards. It does something every single time that I would land it. It would sometimes spin, sometimes the solar panels would break like they did here. But the main thing that went wrong here was right here. I was landing in the ocean, and I was pretty far in the ocean, right? And so I'd have to go very far at a very slow speed if I was stuck in the water. So it's like, okay, I'll just cut the parachutes and I'll just fly it out of here. You know, it's an airplane, right? And it was like, no, you're not going to do that. Because, as I found out later, any slight asymmetry in the wings ends up being a giant pain in making this thing fly. And as you can see there, it was just doing loop-de-loops. It was spinning around. It just kept going in death spirals and it was totally uncontrollable. So I had to, of course, retry that whole thing over again. I decided to bring out the wings again this time while still in the air because it's like, I guess I can't really do that on the ground, or at least it's maybe a little bit sketchier because you have to drag it along on the ground. Whereas here, the servos are still strong enough to do it in the air despite Eve having pretty heavy gravity. And so that's what I did. But it ended up being a huge pain again. And so as dawn rises on Eve, you will see what I mean by that. Of course, you can see this is a solar powered plane, so it kind of needs to be daytime to be able to fly. It doesn't really have nearly big enough of a battery capacity to be able to fly for long. And in this state, it was not able to fly very long at all anyway. I wonder why. Oh, it's upside. Oh, it's crashing. Oh, it's broken. Oh. Yeah, so now that continued to be a huge issue where I could not get this thing to be stable at all, like no matter how many times I tried. But actually that's a lie, because I was able to get it to be stable eventually, but this was what 90% of the flights were like. It just doing loop-de-loops and random crazy stuff and then crashing and exploding. But yeah, eventually I was able to get it to fly stable. And the idea that I had in my mind was that, okay, I'm gonna guess that the reason why this is happening is because the joints aren't really at the angles that they're supposed to be, right? And so in my previous testing, the most easy time I had flying it was when it landed in water and I got it out of the water, because in the water, the parts and the wings were able to support themselves, and so Eve's gravity didn't really affect them that much, right? So I was like, okay, I'll go land this thing in a nearby lake, and I'll let it, balance this stuff out. It seems like a very solid plan. Yeah, and then the game was like, no, you're not doing that. No. Just, no. Screw you. No. What? I still don't know even why this happened. It was only 2 times this happened. And it hasn't happened since. I haven't ever had that happen on any Eve where stuff just blows out of the water. So I was like, alright, well that's annoying, but I am not a quitter, so I will try this again and again and again and again until I get this right, because I've already spent like a week on this, so it would be a huge shame to just stop right now. And then eventually I was like, this is not working, so I should probably change my approach, and that's usually a good idea. And my persistence and trial and error eventually paid off, because I was able to, as you can see, get this thing to fly stably again. So I went ahead again and messed around with the joints a little bit, to see if I could get it to be more stable and actually flyable. And I guess I kind of had success, right? Okay, I'm trying to remember what happened in the video. And yeah, so as you can see here, it's working out pretty well, and actually being able to turn like a normal plane and like it's supposed to be able to. And it was really annoying because in all my testing on Kerbin, it was like perfectly fine, and it was only on Eve that I started having these issues. But with that problem out of the way, finally I can show off how it actually lands with only 2 wheels instead of 3. So basically, because it has such a high lift to drag ratio, it can fly and like fly/glide really slowly, and then just kind of like sit down. It's not like a normal plane where like it lands on its wheels and then it rolls. It lands on its wheels and it just sits down. I decided that it was probably a good idea to go and try to fix this thing's joints again in the water, assuming that it was a freak accident that happened. And yeah, I guess something weird must have been happening with the joints that just made it explode, and it was holding a ton of tension or something, because this time around it worked perfectly as expected. And so yeah, actually I said perfectly, but it didn't actually work perfectly as expected, because in testing, when it landed in water, it was able to cruise at I think 5 meters a second, way faster than this, and it was stuck at only 1 meter a second for some reason this time around. So I literally had to wait like I think 35 minutes or something for this thing to reach the shore. So once it finally reached the shore after however long, I still had some challenges to overcome. Namely, I was afraid that if I went full throttle, it would just throw itself into the island. It's not an island, but the rocks, and break or something. But being a little bit forceful, I was able to finally get it free from the treacherous waters of that lake and into the air where it belongs. My final objective that I wanted to complete was to go to the highest peak in this whole mountain range area, because that lets me show off some more of the characteristics of this plane, namely like its fastest cruising speed, and also because mountain peaks are super cool and they look cool, and yeah, that's basically my reasoning. So here's some nice footage of it just cruising along and going somewhere actually. Landing was again quite easy on this mountain. I just simply had to take a seat, as you can see here, and then what mission would be complete without doing a flag planting? And once he was at the tippity top of the peak, he looked around and saw the beauty of nature and of the planet Eve and knew where to plant the flag. Once that was done, he decided to take some scientific samples because this is, of course, a scientific mission as well as an adventure, and he hurried back down to his vessel and home on this planet, only to find it disturbingly upside down. What could have caused this? Was it because I went ×3 warp speed on land while running? Maybe the wheels, like, I don't know, made it flip upside down. I literally have no idea, actually, but I'm assuming it's one of those things. And who will come rescue Jebediah, and when? Find out next time.